The safe, goofy laughs of late-night television have completely vanished, replaced by a billion-dollar political battlefield that is tearing the industry apart.
It really is just an absolute fracture of the entire entertainment landscape.
Yeah, we are looking at a genuine, real-time crisis right now. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. I'm your host, and sitting across from me is our resident media expert. And if you have been following the news at all, you know things are just spiraling out of control.
Oh, absolutely.
Just recently, ABC indefinitely suspended Jimmy Kimmel Live, and he got pulled right after he made a joke about Melania Trump having the glow of an expectant widow.
Right, which he said just days after a tragic shooting incident.
Exactly. And the crazy part is, this actually followed another massive controversy over his monologue regarding the assassination of conservative influencer Charlie Kirk. Kimmel claimed the Mangier gang was trying to score political points off the tragedy.
Which, as you can imagine, did not go over well, to say the least.
No, not at all.
It instantly drew direct threats of regulatory action from the FCC chair, Brendan Carr, and, public demands from Donald Trump that Disney and ABC fire Kimmel immediately.
Right, but the storm did not stop there. While that fire was burning over at ABC, CBS shocked the entire industry. They canceled The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Yeah, that was huge.
They pulled the plug on a flagship institution. And they did it despite the fact that the show consistently draws over 2.5 million viewers a night.
Which is a massive number for late-night TV today.
Right. So today, our mission is to take a deep dive into the underlying mechanics of this collapse. We have a fascinating stack of sources in front of us. We are looking at media studies from the Oarsman, a behavioral analysis from the American Psychological Association, and some really revealing industry financial data from Barrett Media.
Yeah, our goal today is to figure out exactly how late-night television transformed. How did it go from a harmless bedtime ritual into this highly polarized political weapon? And why the traditional broadcast networks literally cannot figure out how to monetize it anymore.
I want to start by looking at the numbers, because, well, this shift didn't happen by accident. If we want to understand why these shows face such intense political pressure today, we have to understand what makes you, the viewer, actually stop scrolling and click.
It really boils down to the economics of outrage.
The economics of outrage.
Yeah. There is this fascinating 2018 university study by a media scholar named Lindsay Rosen, and she completely breaks this down. She explains that late-night television basically evolved into a format that academics call soft news.
Soft news. Which means what, exactly? Because when I think of late night, I just think of celebrities promoting movies and people playing silly games.
Right, but that was the old model. Soft news is entertainment programming that actively drives political agendas. It primes voters.
Okay.
Researchers actually refer to the mechanism behind this as the Oprah effect.
The Oprah effect. That makes sense.
Yeah. The idea is that when citizens are exposed to political rhetoric in a relaxed setting, like a talk show, it actually changes how they vote and how they process information.
Because your guard is down.
Exactly. Your guard is down, so you are much more receptive to the political framing being presented.
So when you are sitting on your couch at 11:30 at night, you think you are just winding down, but the host is actually shaping your political worldview.
Precisely. And Rosen's study proved that the networks figured out exactly what kind of framing keeps viewers hooked.
They looked at a bunch of YouTube clips, right?
They did. Researchers analyzed a massive data set of YouTube clips from the first 9 months of the Trump presidency. They looked at the digital footprint for Jimmy Fallon, Jimmy Kimmel, and Stephen Colbert.
And what did they find?
Well, the data revealed a direct mathematical link between a host's negativity and the show's digital viewer engagement.
I am looking at how they broke this down, and it is pretty wild. They categorized the political bias in these videos into 3 distinct levels.
Right.
You had low bias, which basically meant the host was strictly critiquing a political policy.
Right.
Just the policy. Then, medium bias meant the host leveled a personal attack at a politician. But high bias meant the host went after both the policy and the person in the exact same breath.
And high bias is the holy grail of modern late-night television. Those high bias videos made up a staggering 57% of all the analyzed clips.
Wow, over half.
Over half. The data showed that when hosts went on the attack, personally and politically, it triggered massive, measurable spikes in total views, likes, dislikes, and especially the comments section.
See, I am struggling with this a bit. Are you saying people actually want to watch someone be nasty?
Well,
Because that seems to go against the entire concept of lighthearted bedtime television. doesn't the audience get exhausted?
It isn't about relaxation anymore. It is entirely about algorithm optimization. Think about how YouTube works.
Right.
The algorithm rewards content that keeps people on the platform. High bias, negative content naturally triggers a fight or flight response.
It gets your heart rate up.
Exactly. It makes people angry, it makes them feel validated, or it makes them want to argue. So they rush to the comments section to fight with strangers.
Which extends their watch time.
You got it. And that extended watch time tells the algorithm to push that video to millions of other feeds.
Wait, so the algorithm literally, financially, incentivizes the host to be as brutal as possible?
That is exactly what happens. You can see the pure power of this strategy when you compare Stephen Colbert to Jimmy Fallon during that 2018 window.
Okay, lay those numbers out because they are fascinating.
At the time, Fallon had a massive established YouTube following. He had 14.6 million subscribers. He was the undisputed king of viral games.
Right, lip sync battles and all that.
Exactly. Colbert, on the other hand, had the lowest number of subscribers in the late-night space. He was sitting at just 3.2 million.
So a fraction of Fallon's audience.
A tiny fraction. But Colbert secured the highest average views, hitting 1.3 million views per single video.
Because Colbert was serving up the high-bias content that the algorithm craved.
Right. Colbert won the engagement war purely because his content featured the highest concentration of intense negativity and personal political attacks. The audience demanded outrage, and the hosts who supplied it won the digital ratings war.
But this creates a terrifying trap for the comedian, doesn't it? I mean, if you train your audience night after night to expect highly charged, negative political commentary, how do you handle actual dark tragedies?
That is the big question.
Because you can't just operate as a heartless joke machine when a mass shooting happens or a national crisis hits.
You hit on the exact dilemma these hosts face. And it brings us to a really interesting concept from an American Psychological Association analysis. They studied how late-night hosts navigate these dark moments without alienating their highly politicized audience.
And they called it something specific.
Yes. The APA calls the strategy the effective shift.
The effective shift. Okay, explain how that actually works in practice.
Well, it all revolves around something called the playfulness key.
The playfulness key.
Yeah. Whenever you watch a comedian, there is an unspoken psychological contract between you and the performer. That contract is the playfulness key. It essentially says, look, we are just joking here. Do not take my words literally. I am trying to make you laugh.
Right.
But the APA found that during a national crisis, late-night hosts intentionally drop that key.
It's jarring, right? It feels almost like, well, imagine you hire a clown for a kid's birthday party.
Okay.
He is making balloon animals, doing magic tricks, and everyone is laughing. Then, halfway through the party, he suddenly takes off the red nose, stares you dead in the eye, and gives you a grim medical diagnosis about your child.
Wow.
It completely rewires your brain. You are forced to pay attention to him in a completely different, extremely serious way.
That is a brilliant way to picture it. By dropping the playfulness key, the comedian jolts the audience out of their relaxed state.
And the APA actually measured this, right?
They did. The APA study proved this by analyzing over 14,451 sentences from late-night shows. They tracked the exact sentiment scores of the words being used.
And what happens to the scores?
Right after a national tragedy, those sentiment scores plunge sharply into highly negative, deeply serious territory. The comedy vanishes entirely. Then, slowly, over the course of about a week, the scores recover as the jokes slowly return.
But what are they actually doing during that serious window? Because, I mean, they aren't journalists. They don't have breaking news to report.
During that effective shift, they switch to classical modes of persuasion: logos, ethos, and pathos.
Logic, character, and emotion.
Exactly. Logic, character, and emotion. Instead of telling a joke, they might use logos by citing the specific details of a controversial healthcare bill.
Okay.
They use pathos by showing genuine anger or holding back tears while discussing victims of a tragedy. And they use ethos by leaning on their established persona as a trusted voice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. This specific combination transforms them from simple entertainers into powerful opinion makers.
You know, Jimmy Kimmel's career arc illustrates this transformation incredibly well.
Oh, definitely.
If you look at his history, Kimmel built his early brand on a Comedy Central program called The Man Show. And if you remember that show, it was built entirely on a frat boy persona.
Very much so.
It featured heavily sexist segments, women jumping on trampolines, and embarrassing, highly offensive blackface impersonations, where Kimmel actually played Karl Malone and Oprah Winfrey.
He openly celebrated being the ultimate politically incorrect average guy. But look at his persona today.
It is night and day.
He has completely rebranded as late night's progressive woke dad. He uses that effective shift constantly. When a political issue arises, he drops the playfulness key and delivers these tearful, passionate pleas directly to the camera on topics like healthcare, gun control, and social justice.
And what critics point out here is super interesting. They argue his current success actually stems directly from that controversial past.
How so?
Well, because he spent decades establishing himself as this flawed average guy who likes beer and sports, his current political commentary carries a unique, albeit false, sense of authority.
Oh.
When he gets serious, his viewers feel like he is just a regular dad speaking truth to power, rather than a Hollywood multimillionaire reading a teleprompter. That is his ethos at work.
Exactly. He built the character, and now he leverages it for political persuasion. And we can see what happens when a host fails to execute this shift.
Like Jimmy Fallon.
Right. Contrast Kimmel's approach with Jimmy Fallon. Think back to 2016 during the heat of the election. Donald Trump goes on The Tonight Show, and Fallon playfully tousles Trump's hair during the interview.
I remember that so clearly. Fallon tried to maintain that old-school, say, Johnny Carson-style playfulness key.
Yeah.
He treated it like just another celebrity interview.
And the audience destroyed him for it.
Yeah, he really did.
The backlash was severe and immediate. People accused Fallon of normalizing a dangerous political figure. The audience essentially told Fallon that being bipartisan or even just politically neutral was no longer acceptable.
The rules had completely changed.
The environment had shifted. You had to pick a side, and you had to be willing to drop the playfulness key to attack the other side.
But relying on personal authority and emotional persuasion to dictate national politics highlights a massive structural problem. We are relying on these hosts to act as our primary cultural commentators. They're the ones telling millions of Americans how to feel about complex issues. But look at who is actually holding the megaphone.
Right. Who exactly is doing the moralizing?
If late night is supposed to be the voice of a modern, highly diverse America, why does the host lineup look like a 1990s country club?
That is such a great question. And that is the core contradiction explored in a fantastic media analysis by the Oarsman. The late-night landscape is almost entirely dominated by straight, white, middle-aged men.
You have Jimmy Kimmel, Jimmy Fallon, Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert.
Exactly. And because these hosts have lived largely privileged lives, the Oarsman argues that their Western-centric homogenous viewpoints severely restrict their ability to authentically comment on issues affecting marginalized communities. When the national conversation turns to Black Lives Matter, or women's rights, or systemic inequality, there is a hard limit to the empathy and depth they can realistically provide. They are speaking from the outside looking in.
This is why someone like Trevor Noah was so incredibly valuable to the format.
Oh, absolutely.
When Noah took over The Daily Show, he brought a unique, outside perspective shaped by his childhood growing up in South Africa during apartheid. He could look at American politics through a completely different lens. He wasn't just another guy from the American Comedy Club circuit.
But with his departure, that void reopened.
And past attempts by the networks to diversify the space have really struggled to survive. Like Samantha Bee hosted Full Frontal, bringing a much-needed female perspective to late-night political satire. But despite critical acclaim, the show was eventually canceled.
Which creates a vicious cycle for the networks. Because the faces of these flagship programs remain so homogenous, the writing and the material naturally tailor themselves to white, affluent audiences.
Which alienates everyone else.
Precisely. The Oarsman analysis points out that this lack of inclusivity doesn't just look bad culturally, it actively alienates a broader, more diverse America. It shrinks the potential viewer base.
At a time when network television desperately needs to grow.
Right. They need to capture younger, more diverse audiences, but they are clinging to a demographic profile that is actively shrinking.
Okay, this brings us to the ultimate breaking point. If you take a shrinking, homogenous audience and you feed them highly polarized, incredibly negative, high-bias content night after night, you create an incredibly toxic mix.
A very toxic mix.
And corporate advertisers want absolutely nothing to do with it.
This ties everything back to our news hook. This is the exact mechanism behind the shocking cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert.
Let's break that down.
According to the industry financial analysis by Barrett Media, you have to remember how the broadcast media business survives. It is not about selling subscriptions.
No.
It is about gathering a massive audience and selling the attention of that audience to corporate advertisers.
But CBS crashed into a very harsh reality.
Yeah.
They have 2.5 million consistent viewers tuning into Colbert every single night. In modern television, that is a massive number.
It's huge.
But they realized that a highly partisan show is practically impossible to monetize in today's corporate climate.
We really need to look at how modern ad buying actually works to understand this. Advertisers don't just blindly buy a time slot anymore.
What do they do instead?
They use sophisticated brand safety algorithms. These are automated software programs that scan transcripts, keywords, and audience sentiment to ensure a brand's commercials do not play next to controversial content.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Corporate advertisers are terrified. They refuse to let their brands get caught in the crossfire of America's culture wars.
So if a late-night host does a high-bias monologue attacking a politician, the algorithm instantly flags that content is unsafe.
Exactly. Major brands like car companies, soap manufacturers, and fast food chains automatically blacklist high-bias political content. They do not want to sponsor a show that actively insults and alienates half of their potential customer base.
Makes total business sense.
Right. So CBS is sitting there with 2.5 million viewers, but no premium advertisers willing to pay for the commercial breaks.
That is wild. Barrett Media calls this a terrifying warning for the rest of the entertainment industry. The days of appointment television and mass appeal are officially dead.
They really are.
If a major broadcast network cannot figure out how to make money off an audience of 2.5 million people, the traditional broadcast model is fundamentally broken.
And you know, the irony here is just staggering.
Oh, so?
Well, think about the journey we just mapped out. The exact same high-bias, negative strategy that won these hosts millions of clicks on YouTube, the strategy that the algorithms rewarded with massive digital engagement, is the very thing that made them completely radioactive to the traditional television advertisers who actually pay the network bills.
That is unbelievable.
They optimized their content for online outrage, and in doing so, they destroyed the financial foundation of their own television shows.
So where does this leave us? The mass audience has clearly fractured. The economics no longer support trying to put the pieces back together on a major network scale.
No, the math just doesn't work anymore.
We are now shifting entirely toward hyper-targeted, identity-driven content. We are moving toward niche shows and digital platforms that only exist to confirm what viewers already believe, funded by highly specific niche advertisers who aren't afraid of the politics.
It is a stark reminder that in the media business, the incentives that drive short-term attention do not always support long-term survival. You can win the engagement war and still lose the network.
Let's pull all of this together, because if you are a listener who grew up watching these shows, the landscape has completely shifted under your feet. Late-night television intentionally traded safe, universal comedy for highly engaging, politically charged commentary.
They followed the clicks.
Right. They learned through the data that attacking politicians on both a personal and policy level drove massive engagement online. They learned to survive national tragedies by dropping the playfulness key and using emotional persuasion.
But by leaning into that intense negativity and, surviving past controversies through appeals to personal authority and largely ignoring a glaring lack of diversity in their own ranks, the format basically backed itself into an inescapable economic corner.
Today, even massive viewership numbers cannot save a show from cancellation if corporate advertisers are too afraid of the political crossfire generated by the host.
It is a totally new world.
It really is. And it leaves you with a final, lingering question to think about tonight. If the economics of modern media dictate that we can no longer afford to laugh together at the end of the day, are we witnessing the death of shared American culture? Or was the idea that we ever truly laughed at the same things just a comforting illusion all along?